Welcome to Two Sons Podcast.
Thanks for tuning in, everybody. If you guys could do us a favor and like this video and subscribe to the YouTube channel so you don't miss any more of our content, we would really appreciate it. High Republic. This is the first major attempt Star Wars has made since Disney made the purchase to extend outside the timeline. To be clear, it's set 500 years or 300 years? 300 years?
I'm not entirely sure.
Somewhere between 300 and 500 years.
Yoda's still alive.
Yoda's alive and like at the peak of his powers. It's set 300 to 500 years before the events of Phantom Menace. And essentially, again, this is for spoilers. So anybody who's listening who has intentions to read High Republic one day, stop listening and save this for later.
Which it's great, and you honestly should read it or listen to the audiobook.
If you're a Star Wars fan, check it out. If you're too busy to read, get the audiobooks. They're extremely well done. You can listen to them.
Incredible.
I drove to Texas for my brother's wedding and listened to the entire last book on the trip, and it like made the drive go by so fast.
The quality is awesome.
Yeah, the production quality on these audiobooks is insane. But anyway, so the gist of the plot, not to dive too far into the weeds, is essentially there's a hyperspace catastrophe that takes place, which is honestly my only real beef with the trilogy, is they kind of mess with the hyperspace rules in the beginning. So basically, let me set this up really quick. So basically, there's a container ship that is essentially a refugee transport that is on its way to the Starlight Beacon, which is basically a giant refugee hub that's in the Outer Rim. And they're flying in the hyperlane. The pilot sees something in the hyperlane, okay? And she pulls up on the stick, and essentially like the ship like exits the hyperlane and just rips to shreds. Yeah. Which on a couple of different levels doesn't make any sense. First of all, like there's no friction in space. So it doesn't make sense that anything would, in theory, if you were going the speed of light and you tried to make a course correction, you would just course correct and then keep going. So that, but again, I'm being nitpicky, but that was kind of weird. And then,
can I say something on that really quick though? Because like hyperspace, and this is one of those weird rules of Star Wars that just makes sense. Like lightsabers exist. Instead of having a beam of energy that goes for forever like a laser does, it can stop right here for some reason, right? So that's like one of those weird like physics of Star Wars aren't the physics of what we know. And I think the reason why it makes sense is because like I almost look at hyperspace as like some like mythical thing that nobody really understands. And they kind of do mention that.
They mention that in the book.
Yeah, they're like, hey, like we don't.
Because the Nile ship is in the hyperlane. Right. And they literally say to each other, like, this is not possible. We were under the impression that we were in a wormhole where no one else could be in that space with us.
Exactly.
Remember?
And the Nile know that they're doing stuff that's unnatural, essentially, because they're the only ones that can do it. And at least the writer was like, hey, this is a really big deal for them to be able to do this. And that's kind of like what the plot is like hinging on. So anyways, not to stop you, but I think it works. No,
I hear what you're saying. So to make a long story short, the catastrophe is actually caused by this entity called the Nile, which are essentially an organized group of raiders. Yeah. That just persistently are looting the galaxy for wealth. And they their leader, Marchion Ro, has access to secret hyperlanes, is essentially the deal. And now there's a whole other thing about how he gets the hyperlanes, which we won't get into, which is kind of cool actually. But he has access to these hyperlanes that give them the ability to do things within hyperspace that nobody understands. They're completely off the grid. They can come out of hyperspace in the atmosphere, which is like a huge deal. Like there's a bunch of different things. But to make a long story short, the whole 3 books is essentially the Jedi persistently underestimating this group of raiders, which is actually led by this guy named Marchion Ro, who's clearly the antagonist of the series. And he is not a dark Jedi. He doesn't have the power of the Force, but he's clearly very smart, and he clearly has delusions of grandeur. Like he wants to essentially have control of the universe. Right.
And he hates the Jedi.
Hates the Republic, hates everything. And they do a really good job of building out Marchion Ro, for sure. Ruthless, genius, all those things. The crescendo in the last book is they destroy the Starlight Beacon.
Yeah.
And there's a bunch we need to get into from the book. I guess, so in the final book, they infiltrate the Starlight Beacon, they sabotage it, they destroy it. During the process, Marchion Ro unleashes these creatures. We have no idea what they are, but we know that there's several of them, and he clearly has access to more, as we find out.
Yes.
At the end of the book. And essentially, these creatures, when they come within any distance of a Jedi, like any reasonable distance of a Jedi, the Jedi basically just withers into nothing and dies. Like they have no ability to fight it. They don't even know what's happening to them. They just get woozy. They fall to the ground, and then the life gets literally sucked out of them.
Yeah,
and it's super freaky. And it's honestly, to me, the most interesting part of the whole trilogy. So, and then the book basically ends with the handful of Jedi that survived down on the surface of the planet where the Starlight Beacon crashed, kind of like taking stock of everything that happened. And Marchion Ro essentially making an announcement to the galaxy that he runs shit now. Is basically the deal. So I guess let's just start with this. What did you think of the ending of the last book?
I thought it was super cool. The reason why is because there's definitely a lot more room for untold story, right? So it completely opens the door for Disney and for Star Wars to move forward in this time era, which is sweet. And I think Marchion Ro could potentially be an amazing character, almost Vader-esque. And the reason why I say that is because there's certain people who exist in Star Wars when they're wearing their armor are just really interesting characters. So Darth Vader, the prime of that example. Another great example, Boba Fett, right? And then Marchion Ro, I think the idea of like the Eye, which is what he's known as the Eye, it would be really cool to see him in like a live action movie. I think that would be
100%
incredible.
Agree. It reminds me of, what was that movie called? That's like the post-apocalyptic movie, and they are like driving around in like big off-road vehicles with like giant speakers on. Mad Max.
Oh yeah,
Mad Max.
It was all of their what they call their ships. Did they have a slang for their ships?
Yeah,
like,
they were
jumpers or something.
So it was like you were a cloud, and then you were a storm, and then you were a tempest.
Yeah.
Basically it's basically their hierarchy.
Yeah,
but the way they describe the characters, and there's enough like concept art that you can see this. But the way they're basically like the people from Mad Max, Glory Road or Fury Road or whatever it's called, where they're just like, it looks like people in a post-nuclear wasteland kind of vibe. So let's start here. So because the way I look at it, it's Elzar Mann and him kind of turn into the dark side a little bit. I want to get into that a little bit. Yeah, and where the books go from here, and then I want these monsters. So let's start with the monsters. What do you make of the monsters? What do you think ends up being the end of that line, and just overall, like, what does it remind you of in Star Wars lore and things like that?
I think they're pretty unique. Like the idea of having an entity that almost just kind of exists. Like, it seems like it seeks the Jedi out to some capacity, but it's almost like it just, like, wherever it is, if there's a light side user, it seems like it'll just kind of find it and just almost obtain its energy, and then
they keep using the word hungry. Like, they're hungry.
Yeah. But then at the same time, I don't really foresee them as being some like all-knowing, like really intelligent being. I think that they're more of just kind of like a beast of sorts, or like almost like the idea where if they're in the vicinity of something like a light side Jedi, then they'll essentially attack them as a result of like proximity almost. So they don't seem intelligent, or they don't seem incredibly intelligent. Beyond that though, I'm having such a hard time envisioning them. We don't know what they look like really, right?
We know nothing about them. They were encased in ice at one point.
Yeah, they're on some ice planet.
Yeah, he finds them in Marchion Ro drags a force-sensitive raider, not a Jedi, but a force-sensitive raider down this tunnel on this planet that some chick leads him to.
And the chick doesn't know what they are,
and then he kills
right?
them both. Like, he kills the chick and the Jedi, or the Force user. But basically, as soon as the Force user gets within 20 yards of the thing, he just crumples to the ground and
right.
Yeah,
which happens to all the Jedi. And then the way that it attacks the Jedi too is super weird. I mean, essentially, they always describe almost like a crime scene afterwards. And then Jedi's friends, whoever they may be, roll up to the scene, and then there's like a dusty husk just like on the ground.
Well, there's variations too. Like, so some of the Jedi that come into contact with these things, like turn it. So what I envision is like a kind of a vibe like Mount Vesuvius. What was the name of the city? Pompeii.
Oh yeah,
like Pompeii, like like people encased.
That's a great example.
You know, but like, so essentially, some of the people who come into contact with these beasts turn into those things, and if you touch them, they just crumble to dust. And then some of them are more like husky, where like they're like
a mummy.
Yeah, like a mummy kind of vibe. And so that it definitely has a different impact on any of them.
Yeah. So I mean, they're to kind of answer your question, they're different than I think most things we've ever seen in Star Wars, which is like directly force based or like energy weapon based, right? So and what's super interesting is, like, again, it doesn't seem like they really think for themselves. It just kind of seems like they're there and just kind of, get attracted to, light side users. So
nobody fights them.
Yeah,
like
they don't know how.
They come into, like, you get close to it, you start to experience dread. You get like nauseous, your vision gets blurry, you lose your stability at like standing, and you basically just fall and die. Yeah. And then the life gets sucked out of you. And there's a consistent theme of like they die experiencing horrible fear. Yeah. So they do this extremely well in the book. Like making you feel terrified of these creatures. So what I think of when I'm comparing them to other things in Star Wars lore, I think of like different dark side creatures / warriors. I think of like so for instance, the Masasi warriors on Yavin 4, who are essentially, so basically where the rebels had their secret base in A New Hope, on that planet, they're actually stationed. The base is a former Sith temple. And I can't remember, what's the name of the Sith Lord? I'm trying to remember. I should know this. I'm blanking. But there's a Sith Lord that went to this planet and basically enslaved the Masasi warriors, which were basically like these creatures that were actually like dark side using creatures. There's, in the Darth Bane trilogy, Darth Bane is constantly searching for ancient Sith holocrons, and he ends up on a planet where there are like these dragon creatures that are sensitive to the dark side of the Force. Like there is a recurring theme in Star Wars of creatures that are attuned to the Force. But the one time we've ever seen this specific impact was also in Star Wars, or in Bane. So there's this. Her name is. So Darth Bane takes an apprentice. Her name is Darth Zana. And then there's an Iktachi lady. And Iktachi is like, they have like the horns that come down that like go right underneath their chin. And I'm blanking on her name now too, but
I'm so distracted by Lola right now.
Lola is very, very much into attention. If you stop giving it to her, she's going to demand attention. Yeah. See.
Anyways,
this is what I'm saying. Anyway, so
you're saying that there's been good examples of this stuff.
Yeah. No. So basically, Darth Zana takes an apprentice, and it's an Iktachi chick who's an assassin who has the Force capability of stopping Jedi from using the Force. And in the the first scene of the third Darth Bane book, there's a dispute that's taking place on a mining planet, and they send a Jedi to take care of it.
Right.
And the Jedi's like sitting there, and he's like dealing. There's this group that's like getting ready to rebel against the established like upper class of the planet. And the upper class hires an assassin to go kill them all. And so the assassin comes in and just immediately like kills everybody. But then the Jedi's like ready to fight the assassin, but he tries to tap into the Force.
Can't do it.
And he can't.
Yeah.
And there's a lot of similar feelings, like a horrible headache. Like the inability to focus on anything. Yeah. Fear. Like overwhelming fear, a lot of like similarities there. So that's what it reminded me of the most was the way that Dark Jedi had that impact on other Jedi.
Do you foresee Star Wars moving forward with this? Do you think they left it open to touch base on it like in a year, in 5 years, in 10 years? Like, how do you think they're going to use this new info with Marchion Ro and the end of this book, because it's definitely still open.
It's Mark Monroe's power.
Yeah.
Like, so the book ends. Mark Monroe basically has like a brag session with the Republic, basically saying like, I'm going to do whatever I want in this galaxy, and you guys can't do anything to stop me.
Yeah.
And he mentions that because the creatures that he put on the Starlight Beacon die when the Starlight Beacon crashes into the planet. But he says to himself, in his thinking aloud in the book, he says, I know where I can find more of these creatures.
Yeah.
So it's clear that that's going to be the thing. So obviously looking forward, there's going to be something that is going to impact the future. The Jedi are going to have to fight these things eventually. We'll have to figure out how they do that. Yeah. So there's two other things I wanted to hit on. So first, let's do Elzar Mann. So
cool.
Elzar Mann has, in the second book, at one point, he lashes out with the dark side of the Force to throw a floating island. Mm-hmm. And it ends up being this, like, all the Jedi on the planet, like, feel it. They feel this weird lashing out of the dark side. And Elzar Mann like goes through an entire thing where he has to go to he has to go into exile basically to get with what they called a wayfinder.
Finder, I think. No,
pathkeeper, waykeeper,
I can't remember.
Waypath keeper finder.
I know.
I can't remember what
something along that.
It's a
line.
Jedi
Don't
that
quote
specializes with like your identity crisis.
Yeah.
So, and he goes through this whole thing. But then at the end of the book, he ends up making a rash decision fueled by the dark side that ends up leading to more death.
Yeah, which I think we can say it, right? We already told people not to worry about spoilers.
Yeah. So basically, you can say it. Go
which
ahead.
He ends up killing one of the Nile, who actually wasn't so much of,
former Nile.
Yeah, former Nile.
Yeah.
They weren't active per se. So... And he did it literally out of rage. And he ended up taking 2 lives before he could even understand what the situation was.
And the 2 lives were in the process of rescuing the Starlight Beacon.
Which, like, literally everything that could go wrong was going wrong.
Oh, everything that could go wrong went wrong in this book.
Whole entire book. Actually, pretty much the series.
It was very Empire Strikes Back. Like, the book ends with the Jedi just getting totally railroaded. Yeah. Like,
Yeah, and then, like, the final, like, cherry on top where, like, the Jedi were kind of able to do something good is, like, they're able to fix that water, like, purification system.
Oh, yeah. And they were able to fix the water purification system
and everyone's
on the planet.
Like, all right, the Jedi aren't that bad.
Yeah. We did crash land a space station into the ocean and cause tsunamis, but you know.
Yeah, and tons of people died. Who knows how much money was wasted, but that's not the point. But
lots of people die in this book, by the way. There's a throwaway chapter in the first book where one of the like particles hits one of the particles from the hyperspace disaster slams into a planet, and it's like, and 6 people died in a moment, or 6 billion people died in an instant. And
I know.
Like, okay.
I was struggling because like it would be like I get home from work, dead tired, and then I read like I don't know which chapter, but every single chapter was like super short, and it was just about people dying.
Dude,
it was like, these 2 friends, like they work in a little station together. I think it was one of the chapters, and they got really, really close with each other, and then they died.
Yeah, the entire first half of the first book is just let's introduce you to characters and then immediately kill them. It's very Game of Thrones.
And I was just like, Jason, I'm having a hard time focusing on this book. Number 1, because it was super stressful in the beginning for me, at least, and then number 2, just because there was like all these like micro chapters of just people just like dying, and I was like, okay, why am I even learning about these people? Well, long story short, I ended up loving the book, of course.
It's worth reading. Just understand that when you get the first book, you're gonna have to work through some stuff.
Yeah, for sure. But now hopefully all you guys know that, because anybody's probably still listening has already read it. So either like, oh yeah, that's right, Luke, I felt that too, you know. But
so Elzar Mann.
Yeah.
The book ends with him having another brush with the dark side.
Yeah.
So, what do you expect them to build him as a character who falls to the dark side, or do you think this is all part of just like a side plot about Jedi fighting their dark side urges?
I actually am very curious to see what you think about that. So I'm gonna say my answer, and I want to hear your thoughts. So, I think it's a really cool opportunity for him to go evil. I really do. And I think it would be really interesting and kind of fun from like a fan standpoint to see that and maybe go like where he comes back. We've seen that in Star Wars lore before. I think he could go evil. I think we definitely can't say he's not going to, because he definitely has that propensity where Fitz really hitting the shan, so to speak, where like he just kind of turns to it immediately. He's like, "Oh, this is really hard. Let me just tap into the dark side."
Elzar's not great with self-control. Yeah, like when things go bad, he's like, "Oh, dark side,
dark side. This is comfortable." What do you think? Honestly, do you think they're gonna develop that or no?
I want that so bad because, like we talked about earlier, I think that's a fundamental part of the Star Wars experience. I don't think it's going to happen. I think they are very intentional about not having the dark side be a part of this. And
you just want it to be Nihil, which are like non-Force users, versus the light
Jedi.
side.
That's my guess.
I see.
And my guess is this is a lot more about Jedi fighting their urges, and Elzar is like, but
the humanity of Jedi, per se,
exactly,
or like the human nature of Jedi. Even though, there's aliens and stuff, of course. But they're the imperfections of Jedi.
There's a lot of imperfections of Jedi on display in this book too, because I mean, their arrogance is what causes them to basically get their butt kicked by the Nihil, because they essentially keep thinking they've defeated the Nihil.
Yeah,
they're like, "Oh, we got him," and then it's like very clear. Like
to
every time they destroyed a small Nihil fleet, they were like, "It's over," and it's like, it's actually not over.
Right.
But so this is actually a perfect time, because I hope that they go forward with Elzar Mann turning to the dark side, but my prediction is no. So intel is, from what I've read, that so these 3 books basically built up the Nihil as a true villain, established a bunch of characters. From what I understand, the next book is not going to be in the future. It's going to be set 150 years even earlier.
Oh.
And basically apparently they're going to start with a book that involves Porter Engle, who Porter Engle is a character in the book, in the trilogy, that is an old Jedi that when he was younger was an amazing swordsman.
Yeah.
So they're going to go back.
Turned chef.
Yeah, turned chef. He's the chef. So like I'm really curious to see what they do going backwards there, and what all that means, because the thing that's tough with that is like the Nihil are a very interesting antagonist. Marchion Ro's a very interesting antagonist. And if they go backwards, now I don't know so I'm hoping that they go backwards and they do involve some Sith. I mean, we don't know what to expect.
I see.
This is presumably, because it's only 300 to 500 years before Phantom Menace, this is presumably during the time of the Rule of Two. We do know that Disney is making a TV series called The Acolyte, which is set in the High Republic, and it involves a dark side Force user in their training. So I'm hoping that involves the Rule of Two. But like, one of the things that concerns me is like they get us all hooked, huge cliffhanger at the end of this book, and now they're going to go backwards 150 years. And who knows where they're going from here? Yeah.
No. Yeah. And that's what's so hard is like there's all these opportunities, probably better opportunities for Disney to take than what they're doing now, unfortunately. So I really hope that they do get into all that, because there's literally infinite options for them, and we'll see if they take them or not. But after it's not going to happen anytime soon, though, probably. Like, we've got Kenobi, that's going to be the big thing. We've got Ahsoka, that's going to be one of the big things.
There's a movie. The Ahsoka comes out next year. This December, I believe, is that Rogue Squadron movie, I believe.
Which is in the same era?
I don't know.
Oh.
I think Star Wars Celebration is like next week or something, I think, or this week. Like, it's coming up. So I hope we learn. I hope we learn more soon. Yeah.
Yeah.
But I mean, to put a bow on it, guys, the High Republic trilogy is great. It's very well written. I check out the audiobooks if you don't have the patience for reading. But if you're a Star Wars fan and you want to get a cool new Star Wars story that doesn't have Kathleen Kennedy's hands on it, I think this is the way to go.